Well, hello, and good Saturday afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is having a great Saturday so far. End of July, and great weekend so far. It is the end of July. It's hard to believe. My name is Don Terrell, and I want to welcome you to another great episode of The Color of Motion, where I like to say stories come in all shades. And I highlight people of color and diverse backgrounds in the industry of motion graphics, animation, visual effects, cartoons, and comics. And super excited for you to be joining us today. You know the drill. Please let me know where you're tuning in from. Give me a shout out. Hopefully, it is broadcasting without any hitches. I'm kind of monitoring it, and it seems like LinkedIn is being LinkedIn and giving a little issues here and there. So if you are tuning in from LinkedIn, uh, if you do happen to catch it from LinkedIn, you may want to jump over to my Facebook page or uh, YouTube and check it out because it seems like LinkedIn wants to be finicky today. But super excited that you're joining me wherever it is you're tuning in from. Again, make sure you hop on, say hey, and let me know where you're checking us out from. Uh, just a little housekeeping. Make sure if you are tuning in from Facebook that you join our new Facebook group. Facebook.com/groups/ the color of motion. The page is up and going. There's already some great content on there, and I definitely want you to get plugged in and be engaged. Of course, this starting next month, the show's going to be broadcast from the group page. So make sure you get connected because if you're one of those ones that loves to check out the show from Facebook, I definitely don't want you to miss out on any content. For sure. So, again, make sure that you get plugged in. Facebook.com/groups/ the I keep saying backslash. It's actually /. I always get that messed up. It's /groups/ the color of motion. So get plugged in and get engaged. Um, Definitely want to make sure that you connect with me. You can check me out and find me on all my social channels right here. Say hello, get connected, follow me. Like I said, I want you to be engaged with the community for sure. So you can find me on all those social channels. Again, if you are one of those ones that loves to check out the show from LinkedIn or Facebook, I always highly tell people to connect with me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com. Give a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you're notified of when all new content comes up. And you can check out all the past great episodes on YouTube. Uh, like I told you before, we are looking to level up the show, so we're starting to go after sponsors for the show to help us continue to level it up and make the channel the best possible channel that it can be. If you're one of those ones that wants to support the show, I have a tip jar set up so that you can drop a few dollars into the jar there. You can scan the barcode or search with me on Cash App, Don Terrell 65 and find me there. I was getting ready to say .com, but it's not .com. But I'll be throwing all this information up at the end of the show again as well. So definitely make sure that you know support the show. Because if you do, we are planning on giving a shout out to all the people that support the show, sponsors or just individuals. So we want to make sure that we give you the correct due and shout out that you deserve. And we always want to thank our supporters on the show. So your name could go there. So support the show because, like I said, we've got some big things planned. Look for the new website for the show to be up pretty soon in the next few weeks. Also, we're going to be introducing some swag items on the show, doing giveaways, contests, have a place on the site where you can purchase swag items on the show. Also, be giving our guests some swag bags as well. So, we definitely want to look out for our guests. And maybe some of the guests might donate some swag as well on some of the things that they're doing. So you just never know what's going to happen for sure. So, like I said, I am super, super excited about this episode. Me and my next guest have connected a while ago. We'll be going back and forth and looking forward to sitting down and talking with him. Also looking forward to him helping me out with my writing skills. So that's super excited. But again, like I said, I'm kind of monitoring the show, and it seems like LinkedIn is kind of going off and on. So let me know if you do happen to be checking it out from there. It keeps saying that it's online and then sending data, online, sending data. So, like I said, LinkedIn is just being kind of funny today. But that's why I multi-stream to all the channels. So you can always check us out, like I said, on my Facebook page or YouTube. But again, I highly suggest you get subscribed to the YouTube channel so that way you definitely won't miss out, or the Facebook group again. So with that, I am going to dive right into this episode. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this for a while, and he's a super cool guy, super talented, as you're going to see, and just so excited to be sitting down finally with my friend and just chopping it up. With that, my next guest is a freelance writer of comic books and novels. Additionally, he is an editor for Mad Cave Studios, a freelance writer for BlackBox Comics and Zenescope Entertainment, and the author of 2 children chapter books for North Star Editions Publishing. He has also created his own comic book series, Black Cotton, which we're going to dive into, with Scout Comics and several self-published comic books and series. But most importantly, he is a knower of self, enjoys reading and binging shows with his wife. We're going to find out which shows he binges on. And loves splitting time between playing LOL dolls with his 2 daughters and watching his son play video games. Everybody, please help me welcome my very special guest and friend, Mr. Brian Hawkins. Brian.
Hey. Thank you for having
me. Welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. It's like your whole show is so cool. Like in the green room, I'm watching all the graphics come in and out. It's amazing.
Oh, so cool. Man, I tell you. Well, like I said, we definitely try and bring that wow factor and make it a very special experience, not only for our guests, but for the viewers as well. So I appreciate that. We're going to dive, like I said, right into it.
Okay.
I'm curious, what was the motivating thing that got you into the industry when you were younger? I mean, were you always a writer per se? When you were young, did you do a lot of writing when you were younger? Um, enjoy comics, or when did what was that thing that kind of got you on this path?
You know what? I've thought about that question, that idea, like a lot, and it really goes back to my mom. And I'm a mama's boy, right? And like I remember sitting on the couch, watching soap operas with her. So soap operas were really like my introduction into like storytelling. And of course, there were Saturday morning cartoons, and you know, it, there were the children books, and I always loved just like the stories and the art, how they went together. And I think over time, matter of fact, I won a contest. It was a library contest, like third grade or something. Brave Irene. I love the book. I still have that book, and they gave me a signed copy of it, signed by the author. And it's just been my life has been immersed and surrounded with storytelling in some form or some fashion. Of course, there was comics, X-Men, Spider-Man,
Yeah,
Batman, Superman, like all of those, and it just to movies and etc. And
yeah.
it's just been surrounded by it. So, but the earliest I would say would be my mom.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
sitting there with her watching soap operas,
What
and
soap opera? Because I was like that with my mom. She was a
yeah,
big All My Children fan. It just, all of them really, but All My
yeah,
Children.
Days Our Lives,
Yeah.
Another World. I'm actually, true story. I'm named Brian is a pretty regular name,
Yeah.
but my mom named me Brian after a soap opera character. His name was Brian Bancroft, who was on Another World. So we watched Days of Our Lives, Another World. We went to Young and the Restless, and Bold and the Beautiful. Uh, all through high school, I watched it. All through college, I got to the point where I could create my classes around my soap opera schedule. And so I was watching Azure Returns, Guiding Light. Uh, my soap opera now is General Hospital, and
Oh,
that's because
is it still
some
on? I mean, our
General
soap
Hospital is
opera
still
still
on
on?
and
Our
still,
soap opera
yes,
still on?
they are still on. They made it through COVID. Yes, they did. Oh man,
Because I know they were dying. It seemed like they were dying out there for a while. I guess
yeah,
when,
yeah,
Netflix and people started
yeah.
binging on shows and
Hmm.
things like that, it's like, okay, are soap operas even, still airing?
Yeah, Another World that got canceled, so I had to find a new one. A couple of my characters left Another World, went to As a Return, so naturally I followed them, and so my roommates in college, like I got them hooked to soap operas too a little bit, and we used to call each other, and still talk about the soap operas even after college.
Oh,
So
man. Oh,
yeah,
man. So when did you, I mean, so when did you start crafting and writing your own stories? I mean,
okay.
at what age did you start sitting down and crafting, your own worlds and stories?
So my own world. Well, my earliest memory again is elementary school making an actual book, and I created a story. It was based off my mom, and she was like some adventurer. Obviously, I love my mom, and so, um, and but I continued to write, but it really didn't crystallize. I guess you could say until I was in college, and I was probably a sophomore, and I took a playwriting class. I love Shakespeare. Always loved Shakespeare. I love the theater, and I took a playwriting class, and it was just home. It was just my thing, and it really began there. And I haven't stopped writing since.
Oh man, oh man. So you were obviously you like comics and things like that. What were the kind of comics you read? The typical Spider-Man, X-Men, or what
Yes.
was your favorite?
So early on, I was definitely more about the superheroes and Marvel and DC, not even recognizing Marvel from DC, all one big thing to me. And so I was really into Batman. Like Batman is my favorite superhero. Superman, Spider Man, X Men. I was really into Wolverine, and I love the cartoon. So early on, it was definitely superheroes, but I would say in my adult life, my reintroduction into the comic book world was definitely independent comics,
Gotcha.
and which when I was a kid, I didn't even realize they existed. So when I had the opportunity as an adult, and I found out independent comics exist, I was, whoa, what is this? And I haven't stopped reading or trying to write my own since then. So
Well, what was the kind of the biggest thing when you took the writing class that really helped you, per se, that you would say? What was the main thing that it probably taught you as far as structuring and writing stories?
I would say voice and pacing. And now I say voice and pacing, but I don't think like I think I paced well back then, but I definitely pace stories better now. But I understood what my instructor, what the professor was trying to bring out of us. You know, one thought is character plus obstacle equals story, and within that is like where you will find the pacing, how the character is the vehicle of the story, and you're in a car moving with the character, and you run into an obstacle, and whenever you have that character meeting an obstacle, that will equal your story. So it's all about um, the finite nuances that go into making that work, and how is that going to work, how is that going to unfold, and the voice of the characters help you to hear that story. Like all your senses, all those faculties, are going to work in storytelling. And for me, as a reader, as a viewer, as someone in the audience, indulging in a story, all of my senses are active in that sense. Like I'm all my senses sense. Anyway, yeah. So and as a writer, it's for me at least, I'm always actively trying to um, bring those things to life, make them as real as possible. Um, every story beat has a feeling, and your story beats then play into the pacing, and the pacing of the story plays into how the story feels to the reader, how it feels to the writer as you're going through it. So all of that kind of just uh, meshes and
Yeah.
comes together. And early on, I felt like I had the pulse of it. Hindsight 2020, there's always room for
Yeah.
improvement, and I'm still trying to improve.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, so when you sit down, do you start with a character in mind, or do you start with uh, some kind of theme or topic that you're wanting to talk about, and then input characters into that?
I would say it happened in different ways for me, but it's definitely more so in like an idea. I usually don't start with like I would say that normally my stories are don't begin with a character. They begin with an idea,
Idea.
a theme, a motif, an issue, something that intrigues me, even a question. And then from there, because the characters are the vehicles, my mind then begins to bring in who or what should be there to carry that story forward.
Got you. Got you. Got you. So as it is now, Do you dedicate time every day to set aside for writing, or do you kind of let it come to you as it comes to you? You know, if let's say like, I'm just having a hard time kind of diving into a character or a story,
Hmm.
or do you physically sit yourself down to come up with something?
Um, well, I hate to say this, but it's a little bit of both now. So the fortunate thing is, I do a lot of freelancing, and I'm fortunate to and very grateful to where uh, I have several projects happening and still trying to bring in some more.
Yeah,
So I'm always at work with something, and so what works for me is and my wife helped me with this. I created a to do list, and so based off of what I need to do with projects, I have it on this list, and I kind of allocates a certain amount of time or a certain day for those projects, and so then I work on them, based off of that. Um, I'm a firm believer in not forcing the story.
yeah.
So there has been times when I'm just not ready to write this story, and I can feel it, and that's one of the things. You know, I don't want to say I've trained myself, but I try to. I've actively tried to be aware of or intuitive enough about myself to know when I should write a story and when I shouldn't. And and sometimes I need to write a story, but I know that intuitively it's not time yet.
Yeah.
It's I'm not ready yet, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, what have you. And so, I go do other things. You know, binge watch TV or play with my kids or go outside. I was longboarding for a while until the Achilles, but
Oh man.
creativity happens, and
So
I
what
believe,
stories
yeah,
do you enjoy watching that you really get into the writing of the story that, like you said, you binge watch and you kind of, like I said, that you really like that?
yeah.
Hey,
Well, I have a lot of them. I'm gonna start with one that I binge watched on my own, not with my wife. She isn't like really big into sci-fi, but The Expanse.
okay.
I crushed that. Amazon Prime, I crushed that. Like I started watching it and I couldn't stop. Like I was staying up until like 2:30, and normally like I tried to have a decent bedtime. And I'm saying that, but I'm just crushing The Expanse. The writing on The Expanse is so phenomenal. The world building, the characterization, the character's voice, the dialect of different groups, like it's so much. Yeah, I mean, I honestly could probably spend the whole time live talking about The Expanse. It's a phenomenal show. I love that show from beginning to end. Can't wait for season 6.
So do you find yourself doing that with a lot of the shows that you do watch, that you're looking just like, kind of, I guess visual effects people may kind of
Hmm.
start looking at visual effects in a movie that they go check out.
Hmm.
But do you start automatically start thinking about, man, this is the characters are really fleshed out from a
Yeah.
writing point of view, or do you just enjoy the movie for what it is, bad or good, or what?
Um, I'm definitely always absorbing. I'm always looking at it through the lens of a writer and someone who wants to tell stories himself. And it's not work to me. It's fun. Like that's what I was doing when I was a kid sitting with my mom. Like that's fun to me. Like watching these characters. I'm not checking out a reality. And I know that some people use storytelling to kind of escape.
Yeah,
I'm not escaping. I'm immersing. Like I love the human condition. I like being a part of it. I like looking at it, its flaws, its the potential for greatness, all that stuff, and it's relaxing to me. It's not work.
yeah.
So even though I am relaxing when I'm watching, the writer's mind or the storyteller in me is still active. But that's because not because I want to go do the work. It's because that's just how I'm made, and
Yeah,
it's my enjoyment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're getting ready to just take a look at some of your work because I want to dive into a little more of the graphic novels that
Oh,
you
cool.
write for. So like I said, I was you know just one, the artwork's great, but the stories, like I said, just really kind of stuck out to me because you don't necessarily see, I guess, people of color in kind of the horror genre, which I guess
Yeah.
typically, I think, Jordan Peele kind of
Hmm.
started opening that. Oh, we like horror. We could be because we always thought, man, we're the first ones to get killed off. So,
Oh, it's the first one. That hasn't happened in a while lately, though, and that trope is gone.
I'll tell you. But taking a look at just some of the novels that you've written for, like I said, one, the artwork is really great, but the stories are really, like I said, just kind of the atypical horror stories, and you seem to kind of love the horror genre,
I do.
for sure.
I
But
do.
everybody, just check out some of the stories and make sure. Again, we're going to be sharing all his contact information in a little while too. So make sure that you go over to his channels to, purchase the books and everything, and really dive into a lot of the characters. But like I said, I'm a kind of a horror fan, so I love horror. But like I said, you just
Right.
didn't typically see us. Who was it? I can't remember what comedian was saying. Said black folks wouldn't last too long in a horror because they're not gonna
Yeah.
stick. They're not gonna stick around to be seeing what kind of ghosts
True.
and stuff. So, but the titles are just like I said, such phenomenal titles. And like I said, I want to kind of dive into just like I said, uh, not only your series Black Cotton, but just like I said, the fact that you seem to love writing for horror, and that type of thing. Is that, like I said, your although Black Cotton doesn't look like it's a horror, it looks more, well, first, is horror kind of the passion and love of what you enjoy writing? One of the main things. I mean, as a writer, I'm sure you enjoy really diving into a lot of different, character styles and
Right.
stories.
Right. So as a fan, horror is my thing. I love watching, slasher films. Uh, Horror is my genre. I really enjoy writing horror as well. And here lately, I've gotten the opportunity to write more of it. For a while, I I didn't really write any horror. Well, I have a couple screenplays that's over somewhere that is horror, but like I really didn't write any horror per se in comics. But here lately, I've gotten a chance to, which I love. Horror is definitely my genre. Um, I When I say my genre, it's one of my favorites. I enjoy writing in different genres, so I wouldn't say that like I'm this over
Yeah,
here or that over there, but I do definitely enjoy watching and reading and writing horror.
gotcha.
Yeah, it's cool.
So,
I'm a huge fan.
so diving into your series, Black Cotton, what was the one? What was the inspiration for Black Cotton, and then two, just tell us a bit of the backstory of Black Cotton.
Okay, so Black Cotton really came about through Patrick Foreman. We have a mutual friend, uh, Luke Wright, who is a speaker, author himself, educator, and Luke had a friend named Patrick. We'd never met, but Patrick is a comic book collector. Like he's like a for real collector. He spends money on comic books, like a lot of money on rare comic books.
Wow.
And so Luke was like, hey, I think you guys should meet. And it was January of 2020. And we ended up linking up. And we were at lunch. We were just talking, et cetera, et cetera. And Pat's like, well, look, let me tell you this idea I had. And he was like, look, I'm thinking of a world that's completely reversed, like flipped. And like, even to the point where like the cotton is black. I'm like, whoa, stop. Black cotton. That's it. That's the title. And from that point on, he and I just started talking. And then we went about creating the story. Like, what would the story be? Like, what is the vehicle for that story? What is the vehicle for that idea? And so from there, we spent from lunch all the way to that night. We ended up going back to his house, and we fleshed out the characters, we fleshed out the story of how we were going to bring this inverse flipped reality to life. And so that's the story of how Black Cotton came into existence. And from there, from January 2020, we began like writing it, and we found the artist out. Marco Perugini, phenomenal. He and I have been in contact. We've worked on smaller projects before. I was like, I think we should go with him on this. We looked at his artwork. Patrick at his artwork, and so we're like, yeah, let's do it. We agreed on the black and white approach and the reasons behind it, and and we all just partnered up and created this what I feel is a phenomenal story that's very timely. And I say it's phenomenal, not in the sense that
Yeah.
I wrote it or anything, but what went into it from Patrick and myself, and then what went into it from Marco on the art side, and him capturing the vision, Francisco, the way he's lettered it. It's phenomenal because we know the energy behind it, we know the meaning behind it, and I feel like it's coming across to readers. They're reading it. And getting something from it and enjoying it. So I feel like it's phenomenal in that sense, and it's timely. And
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Well, just to kind of give viewers just a little synopsis of what Black Cotton is about, why don't you just kind of give an overview of what Black Cotton is about?
absolutely. So it is set in an alternate reality where the social order of white and black is reversed. And the story revolves around an elitist family, the Cottons, and their oldest son, who is a police officer. And he ends up shooting a minority white woman, which then affects the social climate that they're in their city and community, but also,
Yeah.
the whole world.
Interesting. Interesting. And to that, kind of to what you mentioned before, you're how is it when you're writing a story and you're trying to pair the right artist with the visual that you have in your mind?
So, huh. Um, I think that's a great and tough question sometimes. I will say that I know the publisher at BlackBox, um, Demetrius. He's a great curator of art. Like he has an eye for art. I would not say that I have his eye for art, but I have something, and so I think what you have to do is one, have the vision of the story in mind, but also be open to an artist's interpretation. Because what it is with comics that makes it so great, one of the reasons that comics are so great is collaboration.
Yeah.
It's not the individual sitting there just churning out a story and it's done. And it's like, oh, I did this, blah blah blah. It's more so, different parts coming together to make a whole.
Yeah.
And so, we write, um, not just for ourselves or for the readers, but also, you have to write for the artist. How are you conveying this to the artist? You have to write. Well, I try to write with an openness to where I'm guiding what is supposed to be there. I'm narrating with, I'm creating the narrative for it to be there, while at the same time leaving room for the artist who is also a creator,
Yeah.
to bring it to life. And that's
Yeah.
important. The artist is bringing it to life.
Gotcha.
So there's a balance there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
with
when
Black
you're
Comics,
writing, you're writing as a story in a script. I mean, I'm pretty or are you writing as, okay, this character says this
mhm.
character says, as the comic book is laid out. But you're
Right.
writing, when you're writing it as almost like a book story.
Well, yeah. So it's a script. Comic book scripts are very similar to screenplays, or to a script that is written for like a show.
Yeah.
The difference is that you're writing to the medium, so it's going to be in the book. So like within the script, several things are happening. You're telling the story. You're you're adding dialogue, between the characters. Sometimes you're using, a convention, the vehicle of narration, but also sometimes within the narrative, like within the panel description, you sometimes even talk to the artist.
Yeah.
You'll give him or her a note, or you say, hey, remember when we did this and that issue? Refer back to that. So there's a lot of interplay. I want to say there's a lot happening within that comic book script. It's such a live script, and that's important to keep it a live script to where it's not like, you know, it has to be like this, and that's it. It's live, and
Yeah.
that's how the artist is able to bring it into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you find, like I said, we're starting to see, uh, like a lot of great, uh, black comics, black creators starting to come up. Do you find that it's an important thing to really, like you said, put black characters in a horror comic and just start to really show black characters and characters of diverse backgrounds into comics? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
I 100% think it's critical. It's important. It's important because, one, because our world is diverse.
Yeah.
This is our world. Our world isn't one thing, and it's never been one thing. So this is something that should have always been there, but since it hasn't, which comes to my second point, it's critical for it to happen because it hasn't been there. And at the end of the day, we are human beings and we process data through images. Our senses. And one of the biggest things is, it's important to see not just people that look like you, but different kinds of people, different kinds of things,
Yeah.
because that expands the mind. That expands this thing that is human nature,
Yeah.
to where the more you see it, the more you are watching or reading a story where people that do not look like you or do look like you are coming together, or they're fighting, or they're disbanding, or something's happening. It's part of that human condition, and I think that will in turn um, help us in the real world to be more accepting, more approachable. Start understanding that, hey, because our ethnicities are not the same, our nationality is not the same, we don't speak exactly the same, our skin color is not the same,
Yeah.
does not mean we're not actually the same.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
we actually are.
Yeah.
It's just a different variation of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I tell people, and I've gotten into this conversation before. And actually, I was talking to somebody yesterday kind of about this. I mean, we're all the same. We all feel the same things. We all experience, we all want love. We all laugh. We
Mhm.
all cry. It's just like you were saying, the small little differences between, some cultures and some races, but we all have the same basic feelings and can all
Mhm.
relate to a story, regardless of whether it's a black character or a Latino character or
Mhm.
Asian character. It's the story and experience that we can relate with.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so, I mean, what I mean to me, and I'm pretty sure there were, obviously, content creators of color and different backgrounds before, but do you feel like Milestone really kind of broke that open as far as just creating these
Absolutely.
worlds and superheroes and characters that were just not the typical that Marvel or DC put out there?
Yeah. So, you always have individual creators, independent creators who are putting out content and creating characters. But then you always have that one moment, where, you can call it a paradigm shift,
Yeah,
where something comes in, and it awakens something. And Milestone, going back, like not their arrival this time
yeah,
or their their second advent, but their first.
yeah,
That was it.
yeah,
And that was important. That was so important. And that process, what they started, is still unfolding today.
yeah,
It's still unfolding, and we have like such great content out there now. I mean, one huge influence for me is Rodney Barnes. Like, he's you know his, from film, from TV, uh but his work in comic books is phenomenal. And him approaching horror, and the way he's approaching it, and the way he's approaching the business of comic book making as well. My hat is off to him. It's on, but it's off to him. I really admire him, and what he's doing and how he carries himself.
yeah.
And there's so many other creators too.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
and kind of to the point of what you were saying, this there's always seems to be these paradigm shifts.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like Black Panther was a big paradigm shift for
It
the
was.
typical
It was.
mainstream comic book
Hmm.
creators that they kind of had their black characters and other
Yeah.
characters sprinkled here and there, but they never really explored them and unleash their story like they should have. And I feel like Black Panther just kind of opened their eyes to, okay, wow, we do have some of these diverse characters that we've
Hmm.
just kind of been ancillary background or sidekick type of things, diving into their story and really, you know,
Yeah.
showing how powerful and big they can be if unleashed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I kind of have a theory, like, well, and it's not like just my theory, but it's kind of known. Like human beings want to evolve. We want
Yeah,
to grow. That's part of our DNA. That's who we are. And the process of being and becoming. And at the end of the day, like when Marvel back in the 60s, when creators were creating black characters, but they didn't go all the way to the forefront. It's still that process of evolution. Human beings want to evolve. So
yeah,
even then, with that little insertion of a black character, or a female who is, a superhero who is, going through a story that predominantly in the past was for a guy. Like those things, those nuances of change come because we're really trying to evolve.
yeah,
It just cannot happen like all at once. It's
yeah,
incremental, and it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And we're at the place now, I believe, where it's more people are are awakened and aware to it.
Yeah.
Also, to be honest with you, it's because more people are awakened and aware to it, it's more viable.
Yeah.
It's more profitable too,
Yeah.
which factors into capitalism and what, a lot of it this is about. It
Yeah.
has to sell.
Yeah.
And the question of if diverse characters could really sell was just a thought that lingered for a lot of companies, I guess, or a lot of uh, the people who hold the cards
Yeah.
and
The
the ivory
mainstream.
towers,
Yeah. The
everything, et
mainstream.
cetera. Can black characters sell, or
Yeah.
can a female lead sell? But yes, they can now, and it could then. It's just
Yeah.
that we just hadn't evolved yet.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I totally agree with you that we as humans, that's in our DNA to grow and become more than what we are.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it, and I get it for studios and in any business, it comes down to dollars and cents. But
Yeah.
I feel like Black Panther just really opened their eyes,
Hmm.
when it just blew away all the competition as far as earnings.
Absolutely.
That, okay, wow, people, they can,
Yeah.
millions and millions, they've blown past every other franchise that they put out,
Hmm.
and was done in the atypical way that we were always presented as
Right.
a sidekick or a slave or a pimp or whatever, and it was
Yeah.
done in such a regal way that just everybody and that's why I was saying that universally it's a story that everybody enjoys. It didn't matter. I mean, when people went in there and watched it, I don't think they so much were just focused on, wow, this is all black cast, and they were just engrossed in the story and the characters and how they progressed and lived.
And you're absolutely right. There's an interesting contrast, I think, and I think it speaks to the power of storytelling and the power of film, and the power of just that visual aspect. And that is, you have the birth of a nation, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Black Panther,
Yeah.
right? Like in like the birth of a nation galvanized,
Yeah.
a lot of people. It galvanized the Ku Klux Klan. Like
Yeah.
that's where crosses being burned came from. That galvanized. And here we go, Black Panther, what I believe that's 2016.
Yeah.
That galvanized as well. Is and now in those two movies, you know, juxtapose those, right? And you can see like the evolution, but you also see the power that film and storytelling has. Because while it's film, it affects this real world.
Yeah.
People bandy around it,
Yeah.
and it's good to have something that's more wholesome and more righteous, like Black Panther,
Yeah.
than something that's so destructive as Birth of a Nation.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point that film and like video is such, and I tell people this too, it's such a powerful medium because it
Mm-hmm.
really does shape the narrative of how people perceive this or perceive that, which is why I think Black Panther, and I keep coming back to Black Panther,
Mm-hmm.
but it just showed, like I said, us as kings and queens, and it really put that image in people.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, we come from kings and queens, and we're more than just our history goes way beyond us being slaves. Our history doesn't
absolutely.
start at slavery, and there's so many more, so much more.
Yeah.
And it goes to every other race. I mean, that's why I love
Mm-hmm.
this time because you're starting to see a lot of diverse animations, comic books,
Mm-hmm.
stories come out that really show other races other than the typical way, like I said, as a slave or if they were Asian, as a laundry worker or,
Yeah,
kung fu person or, this type of thing. We have these small nuances of life that we all share, that we all
absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely. It's I'm you and I are speaking the same language, and it's about um I feel it's about identity, right? It's identity versus perception. And for a long time, you know, diverse groups, it's it's been about how we've been perceived. And then, do we follow that perception, in our walk of
Yeah,
life?
yeah,
Now, especially, but I say now, but there's always been, you know, that movement of who you are and what is your identity. And one of the biggest things, as a black person, as a black man, that I recognize is that in America, like, we haven't had an identity outside of coming from slavery.
yeah,
It's always this uphill climb from slavery. What Black Panther does, what T'Challa does, what Wakanda is about, is an identity that was never lost.
yeah, yeah,
And that's the biggest thing, and that's great to see, be it a king or queen or a guard,
yeah,
like they have their identity. And that's, I believe, something that's longing for a lot of diverse groups in America, is just consolidating on, in identity and who you are as a person, knowing yourself
yeah,
and
yeah,
being able to live that out.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious. Um, as a writer, once you get into a character, is it the process of fleshing out that character easier as it goes, or are there times when you start a character and then kind of have a little difficulty in kind of maneuvering that character forward? So once you create a character and put them in a situation, does it pretty much flow for you as far as from one book's story to the next book story to the next book story?
Yeah, it's I found that process not to be a difficult one. One reason I think is because I'm very much open, maybe attracted to, um, like the life of the story
Yeah,
and the life of the character. And I feel that the character within the story, I feel like the story's alive, and I feel like the character's alive. And so I feel like because they are, while I am writing this and guiding it, I also have to be open to the fact that the character might dictate something else needing to happen rather than just what I want to happen. And, like, for example, J.K. Rowling went on, like on record to say that the story dictated that Harry, by the way, is Harry Potter's birthday. Happy birthday to the boy who lived. Um, but like Harry, the story dictated that Harry and Hermione, or Hermione,
Hermione,
right?
or Hermione.
Hermione, right? All right. I've always said in my head reading, I've always said Hermione. So everyone knows my secret now. Um, uh,
Hermione.
yeah, like dictated that they should end up together, and and Ron was outcast, or Ron went bad,
Yeah.
but she, as a writer, did not want that to happen. This was not how she planned it,
Mm,
so she made the story conform back to how she planned it. But she said that she felt it should have went that way, and I think that's one thing that happens to all writers, is that thing of wanting to puppeteer your story rather than allowing your story to be free.
yeah.
And it's a hard balance.
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
difficult balance.
Yeah. And along that line, do you feel like uh, that's a struggle too when stories are taken into film, where the director has a different version or a different direction of what a character of what the writer has intentionally wanted for the characters? Because I've kind
Yeah.
of heard that little thing about, well, for the film, we put this character in, and it was funny because I thought about that when what film was it? Actually, it was Ray. Um, the biopic that
Yeah,
what you call him did
Jamie
on Ray.
Foxx.
Yeah, Jamie Foxx did on Ray Charles.
Uh huh.
When I was watching the back end, they said that the uh, little person character wasn't any person that was in Ray Charles' life, but for film's sake, they felt like it worked for the story. Do you feel
Right.
like that's a thing that clashes with most writers, how they write the story and intend the story, but what the director's vision for how the film is going to flow and go have in common?
So I feel like one of the themes here is like balance, and because I've said it so many times, but I think there's a balance there too. And for me personally, I like the adaptation not being exactly like the version before. I like it because I want a new experience.
Hmm.
Now, the key to that though is I don't think the story should completely just change, because there's a portion of it that has to honor the vision
Yeah.
and the essence of what the original story is. Now, if you can go about telling that story in a different way, adding a character, taking a character away, I'm okay with it, because at the heart, if the story remains fine, then good job.
Yeah.
While also adding something new, because I want a different. I've read the book,
Yeah.
right? So if I'm going in and saying, well, I just want to see it live to see how they do it, then I mean it's a regurgitation.
Yeah.
I mean, you already created the characters in your mind, their images when you're reading anyway.
Yeah.
So I like to see certain nuances um, in those adaptations, because it does something new to the mind,
Yeah.
while at the same time having something recognizable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a balance.
Well, okay, and along that as well, do you suggest to people, or would you prefer a person read a book, the actual book of what the author wrote before they go to see it, say a movie that was adapted for film, to get the better perspective of you know this is what the author wrote, but this is how they interpreted it in the film.
No, I think it's about the experience that the viewer, the participator, like the participant, wants. And for me, for me, I am very glad that I read Harry Potter before I saw the movies. I'm very glad that I read Hunger Games before I saw them,
Yeah.
uh, because I really enjoyed that experience. Like, that was a journey for me, and I loved reading them. I enjoyed the movies. I did not enjoy them as much as the books. Not because they weren't like the books. It was just that my experience with the books was so great. It was hard for that to be topped.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think, for example, I have it right here, like Lovecraft Country, right? So I bought this book the night I finished the series. I watched the series on HBO, and the series was so good. And I was like, man, I want more, and I don't want to wait to see if there's going to be a season two. I don't care if I know some things can't be the same, so I'm going to get the book. So
Yeah.
after I watched, the series to completion, I ordered the book. So I think it depends on what experience you want to have.
Yeah.
So for me,
For as far as that, did they stay kind of true to the book, or did
no,
they really take their license as far as how they?
it's not even the same last name. The main character, he doesn't even have the same last name. Like, he was Freeman in the show, and he's Turner in the book.
Hmm.
So it's one of the things. And there are other licenses that was taken as well, which is okay, because that creates the different experience. The meaning and the feel of the book, the story, I feel like, is the same. You still get the story,
Yeah.
but there's different approaches, which creates a different experience, which then creates a different effect on the mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the
And
Walking Dead show in the comic book. I think how they didn't make those the same. It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, they totally. It was funny because I'm a Walking Dead fan. You know, I'll say I'm a Walking Dead fan, but it was interesting, you know, because I never read the comics before I
Hmm.
started watching, you know, the show.
Don't tell me about season 10. I haven't seen season 10 yet.
I haven't either, really. I
Okay,
haven't
cool,
either.
cool,
So
cool.
you know,
Okay,
nothing I can give away.
okay, good, good,
But
good. Okay.
I will say it was interesting when I did watch it, and when I, you know, listened to Robert Kirkman as he was talking about, you know, just how he wrote it, because
Hmm.
initially, what was her name? Um, she got killed,
Lori,
Lori,
Lori.
and what was the uh, old guy that drove the van? Um, Not Lori,
Oh,
but um,
Andrea and
I can't
you're
think
talking
of
about
his
Andrea, right?
Andrea and
Yeah, yeah.
the
How,
guy.
was it Al? Was it Al or how?
I
I know
can't.
who you're talking about.
Yeah, they were
Yeah,
in a relationship in the comic strip. In the comic, they had a relation. They were intimately in a relationship. So it was just interesting how, like I said, watching the movie or the
yeah,
show, and then when I learned that, okay, wow, I wonder how that
yeah,
would have played out, you know,
yeah.
just had they done it and followed it. So I always find it interesting. But like
Hmm.
you said, when you read the book, you're automatically creating a movie in your mind
Hmm.
because you're visualizing the characters and fleshing out the characters in your head. So
Yeah.
interesting, interesting. Like I said, I'm a big Walking Dead fan. That's,
Oh yeah.
what can I say?
I'm right there with you. I'm right there
That's it.
with you.
I will say
I
after
read 1 through 93.
you
I
have.
look, if you haven't done it, you should do it.
I
That is
think
an
I read up
experience.
to 12. Yeah, I haven't
Oh,
read all of them. I think I read up
it's
to 12. Yeah,
such an experience.
yeah,
Such an experience.
yeah.
Last last year, during the pandemic, I had like 60 issues that I hadn't read. I bought them, but I hadn't read them. And so like, and I refused to find out anything ahead. I'm like, don't tell me anything about the comic. So I had like 6 of them issues just stacked up, and I went back to like 99, and I read from 99 all the way to 193, and it was such a great experience. When I put that last comic down, I was like, yo, Robert Kirkman, like, yo, like God, like he is one of the gods. He's in the pantheon of comic book creator gods for sure. Like that's phenomenal.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, and you know, I hadn't, like I was just saying, I hadn't really read the comics
Mhm.
before the show, but I mean, I was hooked from the first episode,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, when I
great show.
watched it, and it was
Hmm.
just so well done. The characters,
Hmm.
the world was just so fleshed out. It
Hmm.
was just, you know, I was just on my seat for the next episode, and it was
Yeah,
like, okay, I gotta dive into the comics here and see how the
absolutely,
comics kind of pair up to it, but
absolutely.
just amazing.
The Walking Dead comics got me. That was my real introduction back into comics. The Walking Dead comics was,
Yeah,
and it just blew my mind. Like I'm like, this exists.
yeah,
Oh my goodness,
yeah,
what the heck? Like, and it's been independent comics like to the forefront. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
for me since then.
Yeah, it's just something about a graphic novel that just really, you know, pulls you in. Because, like I said, I hadn't read The Watchmen before I
Mm.
watched, you know, that was another one.
Hmm.
I hadn't read the comic before I saw the movie. And then after I
Right.
saw the movie, I went back and I was like, okay, wow, this is, you know, just such a well done comic,
Yeah.
man. You just,
Yes.
and I can see, I mean, I was never, I mean, I collected comic books, but I wasn't like a
Yeah.
hardcore, you know, collect that vintage type. I just
Hmm.
love comics and cartoons. But
Yeah.
like I said, it's funny because I just went to Houston Comic Con, and it was just, like I said, it's just a world in and of itself. Just a
Absolutely.
world in and of itself. And
Yeah.
people are just, you see the diehard fans that just
Mm-hmm.
love a character and
Mm-hmm.
from everything. Of course, the big thing was Mandalorian. I was seeing
Yeah.
Mandalorians walk, and that's another one. That's another great one. I was like,
Oh
oh man,
yes, such a great show.
oh
Such a
man.
great show.
So I'm telling you, everybody, if you're just tuning in, we're having a fun sit down talking
Yeah.
comics, man. I
Yeah.
love comics. Talking comics with comic book writer, graphic novel writer, and friend Brian Hawkins, and we're having a deep conversation, just all comics. What was the best in your journey so far? What was the best piece of advice that you've been given that you think you always kind of come back to and has served you well?
My believe it or not, my college professor, Bill Griffin, Professor Griffin, he was my Shakespeare professor, believe it or not. And he said to me, because I wrote a paper, and I fancied myself a writer. I wrote this great paper, and oh man, I know the paper was great. It was poetic. It hit on, I was breaking down Shakespeare, blah blah. And he said, like this, like it sounds really good. Like it really does. And it makes me feel good when I read it. But what are you saying? I'm, I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, like it's obvious that you can write, but like I don't know what it is you're trying to say. I want to know what it is, and I like it, but what are you trying to say? So he told me, he said, what I need you to do is to get to your point. Like sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And that was it. And that's something that has affected my writing, and it has affected like just how I try to approach life. um but it was a huge moment for me because of how emboldened like I really was like, yeah, like I know this is good.
Yeah.
And for him to say that it was good but he didn't get it, it really affected me. And then for him to tell me a very pragmatic way to go about getting my point across. It doesn't matter how good something sounds or how well you think you wrote it, your adjectives, your verbs, how poetic you are, if your point is not clear. And that really affected me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'll admit, English was probably my worst subject, and
No, no, don't
I
say
will say it. I mean, not that I got
no,
D's
it's
or
all
F,
good.
not that I got D's or F, but
Yeah.
compared to my other classes, I was average. I stayed at about a C level, but just reading Shakespeare and the what they consider the masters in the old writing
Yeah.
just didn't get me, I guess. What is your correlation about what you pull from that type of literature
Hmm.
um, into your writing, and kind of how has it influenced you or not influenced you?
Oh, okay. It definitely has influenced me. And what I pull from Shakespeare, what is it's the human condition. And I feel like the best stories um, really taps into the human condition. Like if no matter what genre you're in, like if you tap into the human condition, then you're going to be able to explore and create an experience for your readers. Like, and that's what I think. Honestly, that's one of my uh, my feelings. Why my feelings for horror run so deep, because see, horror really goes into the human condition very well,
Yeah.
because you're dealing with fear, you're dealing with all those dark emotions that we tend not to want to look at.
Yeah.
You're forced to look at them in horror. You're dealing with demonic dread, that reverence of what you don't know, that also is very fearful for you, or very fearful for you, and you're having to face it. The go so far to say, and this is all part of the human condition, like the original concept or characterization, of God is stemmed from demonic dread, the fear of the unknown. Imagine, being on this earth with like no blueprint of how it's supposed to work, and all of a sudden the sky gets dark and lightning comes across the sky and there's thunder. That feeling, that natural reflex of fear that's part of our survival mechanism, and you see that in the sky, that's demonic dread. You're going to think immediately, oh my goodness, like what's happening up there? Who's doing that? And so, the idea of God is birthed, or the character God, I'm going to say, is birthed from that idea. And that's what horror is centered around.
Yeah.
And all that is the human condition.
Yeah.
So if you go into the human condition, and Shakespeare did that so well, he wrote about the human condition just in various forms. And when I was studying Shakespeare, like I just grabbed onto it, and I've loved it ever since.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes Stephen King such a great writer too.
Yes,
he taps into.
Yes,
I mean, he sets this human condition in this horrifying setting, and like you said, it's the condition of fear, but still the everyday life and things that are going on that you just kind of marry with it. I love Stephen King.
He's if he's not my favorite writer, he's in my top 5 for sure. But that was one of the main things that I went into writing Devil's Dominion with, was that right there. And and I absolutely just love that story. So
yeah. Let me see if I think I got
that.
Yeah.
So
Devil's Dominion. Yeah. Like I said, and it's such the atypical, I think even more why I like it more, it's such the atypical thing that you see characters of color in that situation, which is why I think Jordan Peele dealt so well with Get Out and
absolutely
his other ones. So I love it. I love horror in the genre of it. So
and that was something that the publisher, he and I have a great relationship. And when, he brought the concept to me and we began to build out the story, that was one of the things that I definitely wanted, and he was like, yes, let's go for that. I wanted a Black female lead in this supernatural horror book, because I couldn't think of one. I couldn't think of a comic that had that, a Black female lead.
Yeah.
At the time, you do have Abbott, which I am, I'm reading the second part of that now, but there's not a lot out there, and so it really was important for me, to be able to write a strong young female Black lead dealing with what she's dealing with. And hats off to Demetrius, for being behind that and publishing that and pushing that concept forward. His IP, that's phenomenal to me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious, what is your family kind of, think about, what you do, and when you met your wife, he was like, all right, comic, work comics.
My wife, she's hugely supportive. Like, she's all in it. She's all in. She supports me in everything. And to be honest, though, I mean, to be completely honest, she said that, she would not 100% just sit down immediately and read anything I wrote until I was published. She told me that. She said, go for your self-publishing, do it, but to push you, like, when you have a book published, I'll read it.
I'll read it. Till then, I'm not going to read anything.
But yeah, but she's hardcore. She's very she's supportive, but she challenges me, and that
Yeah.
was one of her ways to challenge me, because she understood, like, my quest to be a writer, and so that was one of the ways that she chose to challenge me. But she's a huge fan of of Gretel, of Gretel. Uh, that's that's oddly enough is her favorite. Gretel
Okay.
is her favorite so far. Yeah, just can't get past Gretel. My kids, they think it's cool, but uh, it's not like a big deal to them. Like, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
dad
okay,
writes.
Dad. Yeah.
Dad writes. But what about the LOL dolls, Dad? Okay, I'm coming. I'm coming.
Hey,
All
what
right.
about this video game, Dad? Let's
Yeah,
get on
look, look what I'm building here.
that.
I know you're writing this comic over here, but look at this. Look what I'm
Maybe when
doing
they
right
see it
here.
on the big screen.
Maybe so. Universal willing.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, too funny, too funny. So what's your well, into that? Like I said, you write a lot. Do you see yourself writing? You know, for film, just kind of say like a sitcom or something like
Mhm.
that, those type of things, or a romantic comedy outside
Oh
of
man.
outside of comic, the comic genre, but just say for a live show or something like that.
Um, that's definitely something I would be interested in. It's not something that I think I would pursue, like to
Yeah.
say like that's like a goal. But it's something that I would, if the opportunity arose,
Hmm.
um, then yeah, I would love to, flex those muscles, at that level. You know, I, I love telling stories. So if I got a chance to tell a story that way, I would not pass it up. No way.
Gotcha, gotcha. And to date, what's been the most challenging title that you've kind of you know done?
Black Cotton.
Black Cotton has been the most
Black Cotton.
challenging.
Yeah, yeah. Black Cotton. I obviously love the story. It's like it's a part of me as much as it is a part of Patrick and Marco and everyone. Um, but Black Cotton, like there were times, when I just couldn't write it. There were times when I just wasn't ready to write it.
Yeah.
There were times, scripting that Patrick and I just, he's on one part, and and I'm there, and we're working on it, and then we like step back, because part of the process of Black Cotton was a lot of conversation, deep conversation about implicit bias, about how we perceive ourselves. There's so much of our world put into Black Cotton,
Yeah.
but even more than that, it's it's us taking a step back. And I'll speak for myself here to say, like, I would really try hard to step back, to step out of myself. A black man, a man, even like human nature itself. Step back and try to really see it clearly, see what this human existence, this human condition is, um, clearly, especially when it comes to race, when it comes to social order, and that process of kind of trying to step outside of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it it's a lot, and
Yeah.
it takes a toll.
Yeah.
But it's all part of like knowing yourself. And through writing Black Cotton, I've gotten to know myself.
Yeah.
You know, even more. So, but there were definitely a lot of aspects to it where it was challenging.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
to that
yeah.
respect, what's been the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself watching or writing Black Cotton?
I would say that kind of goes with double consciousness in the layers. that exists within double consciousness. Because in writing the dialogue for some of Black Cotton, like finding that place where like having to convey an idea of inequality while also trying to push forward a certain awareness or of fairness. It's such a hard balance. It really was me going like, how do I really perceive myself? You know, W.E.B. Du Bois, like double consciousness, like how, like I'm looking at myself, and I'm a, I'm a proponent of knowing myself, but how much of me knowing myself also still includes like how I perceive myself based off of someone else's perception. And it's this layer
Yeah.
of peeling back that that can be kind of uncomfortable. So for me, okay, so I guess the biggest thing is the like I feel like there's a part of like arriving to know yourself, right? But I also understand that there's, it's a process. You are never completely, like, you're never at a stopping point of knowing yourself. But the mind can create this illusion of arrival, like, yeah, you know yourself, you're good, even when you don't want that. And with Black Cotton, I realized, like, yeah, I definitely haven't arrived at anything. Like, I'm still peeling these layers back. 42, I'm peeling these layers back. And I'm going to be peeling these layers back all my life. And there is no arrival.
Yeah.
And Black Cotton reinforced that for me, because I'm having to write very sensitive social material in a way that is palpable for everyone. Like, I'm taking out my implicit bias. Like, in order to do that, I really have to dig deep into what my implicit biases are,
Yeah.
right? And that's, when you're shoveling and you shoveling, you know, you're left with this gaping hole. And so when you read Black Cotton, I'm speaking from a personal level, and Patrick has his own story, but for
Yeah.
me, when you're reading Black Cotton, you're looking at my gaping hole. What I dug out of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a Black man
Yeah.
who's trying to not view the world 100% as a Black man, but still writing a story, I have to view it as a Black man because of the characters too. So I'm having to be two things, multiple things at once.
Okay. Well, so
So
how does that play out when you have not just a black male character, but a black female character that you have to put a voice to?
yeah,
How do you go about jumping from a man's point of view to taking yourself out from and knowing yourself from a male point of view, and then having to write from a female's point of view, reacting or interacting with that character?
right. So, and I think that goes into like the moon within inside of all of us, which we come from, like the moon that, well, the moon, but going back to like the 5%ers, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have gods and earths, right? And so my earth, my mom, my wife, like I had a very nurturing mom. And so I'm thinking about who nurturing, but she was very strong. So I'm thinking about all of my experiences and my perceptions of her, but also like what, like as a woman, like really looking at who she was as a woman, who my wife is, like all the women that I've been able to interact with and be a part of my life, or briefly or not. And I'm pulling from those resources, which is both perception, but also behind that perception, though, is, I believe, like the veil of actual truth. And so that's, again, part of that peeling process. So I'm peeling off that perception. And so, like, Jaleesa, who is the mom, like for me, again, personally, I'm putting like some of my mom in there. I'm putting some of the women in my life that I know.
Yeah.
But I'm also putting some perception in there. I'm also like, because the interesting thing about Black Cotton is while Jaleesa is a Black character, in this social order of white and Black being reversed, she also socially is supposed to represent a white woman too.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, So how do I write a perspective of a character that's both Black and white, but not biracial? We're just kind of making one thing in one character, and that's a challenge. That's stripping of yourself and stripping of your perceptions to try to get down to that human condition, um, of that gender role
Yeah.
that's in society. So
Yeah.
I I hope I explained that. I feel like I'm talking in circles, but that's how it is in my head. Like it's a lot. It was a lot going on. A lot going on.
Which is the deepness of being a writer. You really do dive into yourself when you're
Yeah,
creating content
yeah,
like that.
I'm trying.
So, like I said, again, for everybody that may be tuning in and tune in, having such a great conversation, and we are hitting up on an hour and a half. Forgive me,
Hey, it's
but
all
we're
good.
having a great,
It's all
great
good.
conversation for sure.
Yes, yes,
And
indeed.
definitely, it's been interesting and definitely something I because I asked you to kind of help me with my writing, but definitely something that is such a deep thing when you get into character
Mm-hmm.
development. It really does kind of turn you in, like you were saying, turn you
Yeah,
inwards to know yourself, to pull out characters that really are relatable and that
absolutely.
people can feel something from. It's a hard thing to get, create a character. And I tell people this, whether it's writing, whether it's animating, it's a very
Mm-hmm.
tough thing to convey emotional conveyance that
Yeah.
people really buy into, you know
Mm-hmm.
for
Absolutely.
sure. So super excited. Uh, like I said, I try to always, and I know we can go on and on and on, Brian, for sure.
Yeah, we
And
could.
it
And I
definitely,
don't mind. I don't mind.
definitely going to, I do want to respect your time, but definitely want. And it's definitely fodder for bringing him back for another episode for sure.
I would love to.
Uh, but uh, you I encourage everybody one, like I said, check out his titles. Like I said, if you're, like I'm a horror fan, but if you're just a fan of story and really diving into character, all of his titles are great. He
Thank
just
you.
tends to wrap them around comic book form, and graphic novel form and horror form, but if you're really looking to dive into character and a great story, dive into his books and really get to know him. That is where you
Appreciate
will really get to know Brian. Dive
it. There you
into
go.
his stories. You know the person, and that's about really, a lot of great you know artists, whether they be writers, painters, sculptors. Look into their art. You'll really get a feel for who they are. I think if you stare at the Mona Lisa, you stare at a lot of great artists of the Renaissance and things like that, you really get a sense of who they are and what they're feeling. Um,
Very well put.
that's the power of art. I think that's
Yeah.
the power of content creation. The true content and creator will really put themselves into their art, and that's where you'll really meet that person, and really get to know their thoughts. for sure.
Very well put. Very well put.
Again, make sure that you connect with Brian. He's on pretty much a lot of the social channels: Facebook, Brian Hawkins Writes, Instagram, the same handle. His website, Brian Hawkins Wright. You can check. It's all the way down. Brian Hawkins Wright. So you
I try to
can't.
be consistent.
Yeah, you can't mess up.
There you go.
If you can remember that, just all the social channels, Brian Hawkins
Brian
Writes.
Hawkins Writes. There you go.
Email Brian Hawkins Writes. It makes it so much easier. I had to tell
There
you.
you go.
So he was able to get that name and lock it in.
Lock it in. There we go.
I'm telling you, Brian, man, like I said, I knew we were going to have a great conversation when we met
Absolutely.
because, we were just kind of just came and spinning and we just had such an easy time talking. And
Yeah.
I so enjoy, like I said, talking with you and
Same
really
here. Thank
looking forward to you kind of helping me, learn that
you.
craft and
Absolutely.
skill of fleshing out characters. Like I said, it's not an easy thing for sure, and sometimes it's not a nice thing because a lot of people don't really want to look within themselves because they don't
Yeah.
like what they see. And I may be like that in some instances,
Yeah.
but
I think we all are. I
yeah,
think we
but
all are.
but
So
it really does force you, and that's why, like I said, uh, I don't do it on a regular basis, but I know the power of journaling, and I tell
hmm
people journal, and you'll really take the thoughts out of your head and see them on paper,
hmm
and really get a sense of who you are. I think that's uh, a big thing we have in common with self development and really learning about yourself
Yeah.
and really diving in and peeling back the layers of who you or we really are. I think we
hmm
tend to think of ourselves as, what we see in the mirror or what somebody
hmm
else says we are. And most people don't really take the time to peel back the layers of who really am I and
Yep.
what do I really think? What do I really want? And really discovering who you
Mm.
are. It's that's what makes a great story. The
Yeah.
journey of realizing who you are.
Yeah. So
So,
well put. Absolutely.
so this has
I get.
been a great episode, Brian. Like I said, I want to thank you so much for making this a great show. Like I said, I knew we just have a great time talking. So I love
Absolutely.
it, man. I love it, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And I agree 100% with you. The first time that we, just you and I, and we linked up and talked, it was a great conversation. It was just
yeah,
two guys talking, and it was just cool.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it, I've
So
enjoyed this so
yeah,
much.
so I'm looking forward, like I said, to like deepen it. And I told you this when we met. And for me, it's about relationship that goes beyond the show, and I know
hmm
that our relationship will go way beyond the show,
Yes.
and how we are together. So I appreciate your friendship, brother. I
Same.
appreciate the skill that you bring, and
No, I
so looking
appreciate it.
forward to sitting at your feet, learning, what in writing stories and really crafting characters. So I'm excited, man.
Well, I thank you for all of that, and I'm right there with you, and iron sharpens iron. So we're gonna learn. We're gonna learn together.
Definitely, definitely. If you could please just hang around in the green room for a minute while I close
Absolutely.
out the show so, we can chat for just a few more minutes
Okay.
afterwards. I would
Yeah,
appreciate that.
you got
But
it.
everybody, please, if you were one of those ones that checked out the show uh, from LinkedIn, I'm not sure if because it looks like LinkedIn was still giving some issues. So I'll definitely be, posting the replay on there. Also, like I said, make sure that you go to the other channels, But again, everybody, please help me thank my guest and friend, Mr. Hawkins, for being on the show. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you being a part of the Color of Motion family, man.
Thank you for having me. And I had a friend who said I needed to say his name.
See?
Vernon Davis, what's up?
All right, all right. You heard that right from here. You heard it right from here. So I appreciate that, Brian. Again, if you could hang out in the green room for just a minute,
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thanks for being on the show, brother.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah. Guys, it's been a great episode. Like I said, I tend to, like I told you, try and keep it around 45 minutes an hour. But hey, if the mood strikes, I gotta run with it. And like I said, me and Brian just seem to be able to chop it up for a while. We could have kept going, but I'm not gonna do that to y'all because I know y'all don't want to like 4 hour episode. We're not The Walking Dead, so so you're not gonna send me. But I appreciate you, everybody tuning in. As always, it's I enjoy it. It's such fun sitting down with all my friends. And I tell them that I don't have guests on, I have my friends on. And we have a great time when we sit down and talk. And like I said, me and Brian are just one of those guys. Again, all his information will be on the show notes, so make sure you hop on over to the YouTube channel. Check out the show from there. Again, if you happen to have been one of those ones from LinkedIn, I apologize. LinkedIn has just been acting finicky today. But just know that you can go and check out the episode on Facebook or YouTube. But again, if you are one of those ones that are like to check it out on Facebook, again, make sure that you hop on over to the new Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/The Color of Motion, because starting in August, the show is going to be broadcast from that group channel. And I don't want you to miss it if you're a Facebook person. But again, I do highly, highly always recommend people to go to the YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Don Terrell. Give a thumbs up for this episode, comment on this episode, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you can be a part of that community. Check out not only this show, but all the past great episodes. Like I said, man, this is going to be great because I'm already booked out for the rest of the year. So we got a lot of great new people coming in. A lot of great friends sitting down in the Color of Motion studio. Let me know what you think of the new look, the new graphics, just the new direction of the show. I'm definitely trying to make it the best possible show that I can. Again, jump on the YouTube channel. You can connect with me on all my channels. Find me. You can find me, connect with me. You know of somebody that you think might be a great fit for the show, that's where you can let me know. Also, like I said, we love people that support the show. We're not going to turn it down. So we definitely would appreciate any support of the channel and the show. Always, you can scan the barcode, go to Cash App, drop a few dollars or what you can change. In like somebody said, coins are good, but I love the stuff that folds. Into the tip jar. It's always good. We're going to give you a shout out if you do. Like I said, we're going to be bringing in some sponsors to help us continue to level up the show as always. So we definitely want to give them a shout out. So again, your name could go there for sure. Like I said, it's been a great show. As always, make sure that you tune in next week. because next week is going to be even better. My good friend Aubrey Eaton Dukes, digital artist and compositor with Disney Digital Studios, is going to be sitting down in the Color of Motion studio. So I'm so looking forward to my friend Aubrey coming in and sharing with us. So you don't want to miss that episode. All right. With that, I always like to close it out the same way I bring it in. Stories come in all shades. You know that for sure. So I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate everybody that supports the show for sure. So make sure that you tune in next week. I want to see you on the show. With that, have a great rest of the day. Have a great weekend. Have a productive week. I'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Cheers.